Hi everyone, I'm G. Brenner, and I'm very, very grateful and excited to have y'all joining me tonight for the premiere of my new single Dee Dee and its accompanying music video. We will open our night with the premiere of the Dee Dee music video, which is around 6.5 minutes long, and then we will go directly into our Q&A portion. The Q&A portion is moderated by Hugo Cervantes, who is the Curatorial Associate at Los Angeles Nomadic Division, and features me and Amara Higuera, the director of the Dee Dee music video. Now, without further ado, we present to you Dee Dee. Enjoy.
As I smear pigment across my lid, I think of you. Never settled into one form. You taught of bodies like ours in the tether us to two poles. The gravity of your presence, the weight of your word, the borders of my being softened. The gravity of your presence, the weight of your word, the borders of my being softened. Amidst a crowd, dizzy, distant disco. Feel your spirit. Oh, we dance right now, Dee Dee. Feel the pulse on me now, Dee Dee. Do you feel it? morning bus home, hustler from behind. As I read the news, the spectacle of your corpse, raise my hand to block harsh sun, but it always bends around thresholds, doesn't it?
Hi, everybody. My name is Hugo Cervantes, and I'm here speaking with G. Brenner and Amara Higuera, director of the Dee Dee music video. I'm associate curator at Los Angeles Nomadic Division, LAND, and I'm so excited to share space with you all tonight and moderate a conversation between the artist G. Brenner and director Amara Higuera in support for the music video of For Dee Dee, the second single off of his album Brushfire out in August. We want to acknowledge that we are connecting with you from unceded territories and waterways of the Chumash, Tongva, and Kich, who are the original peoples of the land we live, work, and learn on. We enact this statement not only as an acknowledgement, but as solidarity with the land back movement and recognize that our role in the work of collective liberation begins with explicit knowing of where we are at and our roles as settlers in unceded land. Additionally, since this event is shared digitally on the internet, this acknowledgement extends to the physical imperial presence the internet embodies as a cable network binding this planet along colonial trade routes we have come to know as the transatlantic slave trade. To borrow from a phrase from the artist Tabitha Rouzer, the virtual is real. An architecture of violence is embedded in the technology we may consider decentralized. We invite you to consider these histories with us as we enter in a space together, as we acknowledge that our materials, our means of connection, and the land we live on are not apolitical actors for our creative pursuits. We also want to thank the indigenous labor that has guided organizing bodies to create land acknowledgements, and we will link our resources for creating this land acknowledgement in the chat. It's my great pleasure to introduce G. Brenner and Amara Higuera and be in conversation with them to discuss and celebrate the release of the music video Dee Dee. G. Brenner is the project of LA-based visual artist and musician Gabriel Brenner. Drawing on artists such as Arca, Grouper, and Julianna Barwick, he crafted an idiosyncratic style that has fallen gracefully between folk, gospel, and experimental electronic music. Formerly known as Pastel, Brenner released his debut EP, It Will Be Missed, via Manimal Vinyl in 2014. In 2015, he released his second EP, Bone Weary, via Houston-based label Very Jazzed. In 2017, he released an EP entitled Absent, Just Dust, a 5-song collection exploring language, loss, and identity through ambient noise soundscapes. On Valentine's Day 2018, he released a one-off single, Close, to celebrate the holiday. After releasing a string of covers and remixes to close the chapter of his Pastel moniker, Brenner released Brushfire, his debut single as G. Brenner. His debut album of the same name will be released August 20th, 2021 via Very Jazzed. At its core, this album is about being immobilized by worlds collapsing at a fast pace and the struggle to find meaning in the remaining ruins. Director Amara Higuera lives and works in Los Angeles. Her work engages a lens-based practice to explore how images, still and moving, shape the histories and interpretations of people and places. She wanted to make music videos with G. Brenner since they first met way back when. Aside from directing, she has been teaching, writing, and making sound works as a practice of personal exorcism and artistic research. It's with great pleasure to speak with them both tonight to learn more about their creative processes and the creation of Dee Dee. So with that being said, I'm really excited to get into the music video and to speak about it and to learn about the process and how you guys work together to make it. G. Brenner, I know that the song title is inspired and is a tribute to your late teacher, Dee Dee. Who is Dee Dee and what do they mean to you?
So Dee Dee was a professor that I had in my sophomore year of undergrad at UCLA. they taught this class called heteronormative colonialism, or it was like, it was a much longer name than that, but like collectively as a class, we shortened it to heteronormative colonialism. And it looked at the history of heteronormativity as a consequence of various colonialisms in different contexts globally. And that class really shifted my worldview and my understanding of myself in relationship to the world and understanding of my own gender identity. And it also introduced me to one of my best friends who was somebody that helped me come up with a lot of the lyrical ideas on this album. So this class was like a big, like in retrospect, a big pivotal point in my life personally and artistically. And unfortunately, while they were still here with us, I wasn't as close with them as I wanted to be. I mean, outside of the class, in the class, lovely environment, and they were an incredible professor, and just the wealth of their knowledge was seemingly endless, and they just brought such a vibrant energy to every class, and they were so open to learning and understanding and mistakes too from people, which I think is like a really generative thing, especially in such a class like that. And our last interaction was actually like a Facebook message they sent me the quarter after I had taken the class, because the class that I took was the first time they were teaching that class at UCLA, and the class was like such a hit that they were able to do it a few times. And they messaged me and they asked me to present, like do a quick little presentation on a paper that I wrote for the final in that class, and it was about like Grindr and how the app, like the actual form of the app, reproduces a lot of the power dynamics that led to a lot of the ways we understand heteronormativity as like a consequence of British colonialism. And I couldn't do the presentation. I had a final at the same time, so I had to say no. And in retrospect, I really wish that I said yes. I mean, I would have like probably flunked the class that I had to take the final for, but I mean, I would have been able to have a much more intimate last experience with them. But that was 2016, I think. And then in 2018, it was around December, I was up north at my sister's house in like the Fresno area, and I got a message from one of my friends that they had passed away like really suddenly, and we didn't know any details of their passing. And I didn't find out until about a year later by chance how they ended up passing away. And I just think learning of their passing really put into perspective how big of an impact their class and just their being as a person really impacted my own life and the ways I think about myself and the world and my work now. And I don't think I'd be the same person or the same artist had I not taken that class and come into contact with Dee Dee and had the brief but fruitful relationship that we did. And so in many ways, even though they've passed, their words and their teachings are still guiding me to this day. And a lot of the times when I'm making work, I can like hear their critical voice in the back of my head, like saying certain things. And they were a very important person in my life. And I wish I had gotten to spend more time and had a close relationship with them while they were here.
That's so sweet to hear. And that's so sweet to hear. Like, I'm thinking about how professors kind of just open worlds to you and then you just go into them. So that's so sweet that song, this really dancey and clubby song, comes from that experience with them. Yeah.
It really felt right to do a song that was so focused around dance, not just in genre, but the lyrics as well. And then the music video now. because they were a choreographer. A lot of their work outside of the class that we were taking was focused on dance and ableism and the intersection of the two. And they also had like a performance-based practice too that was sort of starting to take off, and their academic career was starting to take off at the same time too, and that was focused on dance a lot. So it just made sense to do something like that, if anything, to sort of, you know, honor the work that they were doing while they were still here with us.
Mhm. It's interesting to hear that Dee Dee was a person who was devoted to these spaces of dance and movement and connection, specifically of nightlife, right? That both their academic work and their movement work was gearing them or taking them to that place. And it's interesting to hear you say that, as the music video itself is in this like dusty, absent club, that really speaks to the year that we've just had of the absence of nightlife. And I'm curious to know if how did that absence figure into the song and to the music video at large?
Yeah, I think when I was making the song, it was a good 2 years before the pandemic had happened. But I think when I think back to my personal life at that point, it was like right after undergrad. I had tried to like figure out a job situation, a living situation to stay in LA at that time, but didn't work out. So I had to move back to my mom's house and live with her for a little bit. And so I was like suddenly very cut off from my immediate circle of friends, in a way that I hadn't been for 4 years. So a lot of like that feeling of absence is rooted in that too, in the song, just because the queer nightlife was like such a big part of my life for like a good 4 years, and then suddenly it wasn't, and all the people that I had met as a result of that weren't at my like disposal, not the right word. weren't close physically, at least, anymore. And so I was sort of longing for that club space again, and if you can't go there, well, I might as well make it.
Yeah.
But as far as the video goes, I definitely was thinking a lot about the pandemic. I mean, me and Amara talked about it sort of in depth, how much those spaces were like sorely missed. And there's such a big part of socializing for queer people, and it's like the one space where we get to like exist outside of the gaze of all the people that don't fuck with us, basically, for a couple of hours. And yeah, a lot of that melancholy for that is in the video. We thought about the dust as just this like symbol of all the time that had passed, and the sort of as like a death of that nightlife that was once there. Oh yeah, the pandemic definitely played a huge part in the visual part of this single.
Dee Dee is unique because it introduces dance into the G. Brenner world, which is very exciting to see. The choreography itself is so enveloping and tender and loving. And so I was kind of curious to what was it like to shoot it, but also what was it like to practice and to develop the choreography and to perform it for the music video?
I think that's a wonderful question. I think there's a couple things. I think one, I was secondary to the choreography. We should shout out Alexa Durans, who is the amazing choreographer who was able to bring this to life for us. And, I'm not a dancer, I'm not a trained dancer. I think it's really incredible when that can be brought to life. I think emotions that you can't even put into language, and yearning and desire and missing someone and missed opportunities. I think Alexa was able to really condense that into something that felt like you also were able to feel that as a viewer. So I think, as a director, I came secondary to that, where I was like, how do I make that the best possible version for a viewer to get inside of that feeling with this movement. So I think in terms of the practicing and the trying to get the movement down. I think that's definitely Gabe and New, our other dancer who was in the video. And I think, you know, I don't know if Gabe, you want to speak to that, but I definitely have thoughts on the shooting the choreography part.
So yeah, the process was really interesting because we didn't meet up to practice the choreography until 2 or 3 days before the shoot. And prior to that, I had just discussed what I wanted from the choreography with Alexa and things that I was interested in. We talked about the experience of dancing in a nightclub, being on that dance floor. And you feel like with a group of people, you're sort of vacillating between wanting to engage with them while you're dancing and being aware of your surroundings and the people with you and your dancing in relationship to them. But then other times you're sort of going inward and only thinking about how it feels, not necessarily how it looks, how close you are to someone else, or if someone's looking at you. It's just sort of this like inner moment that you have with yourself that you don't always get in other places. So we definitely wanted to get at that feeling. We also took a lot of notes from the dancer and choreographer and Teresa de Kiersmacher, who both of us like independently were like, oh, we should think about this. And you know, I'm not a contemporary dance buff by any stretch of the imagination, but of the work that I've seen from de Kiersmacher, a lot of the choreography seems to sort of like feel like someone's being guided by a force outside of themselves, or like there's like a locus, a different locus where movement sort of branches out from the body. Like it'll be like the hand or the arm, and then all the choreography sort of moves around that particular point of the body. And I really love the way that looks on camera, especially. So I thought a lot about that. And then we definitely wanted to have the choreography be mirrored, because the lyrics allude to this experience of being guided by the spirit of Dee Dee in that particular instance on the dance floor. So it only made sense to have Dee Dee, who was a choreographer, at least knew who was being the stand-in for Dee Dee's spirit, sort of guide me with the choreography that they were doing, as a sort of like poetic way to get out the nature of our relationship. And then, yeah, the actual experience of working with Alexa was really interesting too, because she didn't like she didn't roll with an iron fist, so to speak. It was very much a back and forth, and like like I felt like I had a lot of say in the movement too, and New did as well, and we sort of tweaked things as a group, which was really interesting. And I think lended to the choreography because it really got at what I was envisioning in my head, at least when we started shooting this.
Yeah, it was really lovely what you said, Gabe, about Dee Dee and spirituality in the nightlife. It reminded me of the moment in the choreography that's really repeated throughout, of you guys just beating your hearts together, or this motion of touching your heart that pulses throughout the entire choreography. And, you know, I guess I was thinking about how people think about the dance floor in a utopian sense, where they could have these ecstatic, beautiful moments, but also in a spiritual sense, where actually people go to exercise themselves, or to desahogarse, as my dad would say. So in the wake of the pandemic and just the awfulness of the last year, what does the dance floor, what does nightlife mean to you now, or what does the reemergence of it mean to you? And yeah, what does it mean to you?
I think shooting this video was really interesting because it was the first time I had danced with a group of people, or really been in a room with a group of people for over a year, or however long this pandemic's been going on. It's felt like eons, oh my God. But that was the first time I had like been able to move with people in a room together for a long ass time. And it really just reminded me of how freeing it feels to be on a dance floor in a space like that. because for me, like, that was just the time where I would go inside myself and just sort of feel like I was just this like ball of energy moving to the music, no ties to my flesh tomb, just something moving along to a beat. And I missed that feeling. I missed feeling like I was getting outside of myself and being somewhere else, or existing so wholly in the present that I felt like I was nowhere else. Um, or somewhere else, excuse me. And I think that's an important thing to think about when thinking of this music video and the song in general, because with the song I was thinking of the dance floor as this like really interesting place where the past, present, and the potentiality of the future sort of collapse into this one super energized space for however long people are there for. Like you walk into a nightclub. I mean, for me, it was like a queer night at, I don't know, like some bar in Montebello or something. And you would walk in and there'd be
365.
yeah, you'd walk in and there would be like disco, like old disco playing, or like house music or techno, or even like fucking No Doubt playing. And like there's this interesting thing that happens where the music you listen to and move to spans across so many decades that it just feels like you're getting a sort of like crash course on queer pop culture. um and then of course you're moving along to this music, as I said, in this moment where you're so wholly present that you feel like you're somewhere else. And then you're moving along to this beat, only moving forward towards the future, and all the potential that could bring. And yeah, I feel like the dance floor is one of the only places where all those things can happen at once simultaneously. And then just thinking about it in like a historical perspective too, like these nightclub spaces were like so important for queer people historically, just to like be able to exist in a space together and not have to like worry about the violence outside that door, or the violence outside that tight-knit community for that amount of time that they were there. So to be able to like enter these spaces and interact with that history feels very rejuvenating. I don't want to say healing, because I still have to go to the life outside of that nightclub door too. So I think part of the euphoria that comes with the dance floor is acknowledging that it's finite. So yeah, I think the dance floor is just something that I sorely missed during the pandemic, and something I'm excited to go back to once I feel comfortable doing so. I've seen a few club night things happening, and I'm just like, it feels like a little premature, a little rushed. But I'll get there eventually. I hope we all get there. I miss y'all on the floor.
You do. Dee Dee is also the second music video that both of you guys have collaborated on, but is solely directed by Amara. And so what was it like working together and like building this visual world for Brushfire? The album Brushfire.
Oh, okay. That's a great question. I think, so much of it, as someone that is not the main person and has been brought in to think about creating that world, is led by Gabe, and so much of it is like, well, what do you want? What do you want to see? And how can I make that happen and help you make that happen? And I think Gabe and I have had so many conversations before anything was made, once the album was finished, but there wasn't any visuals. We were able to talk for so long, and also, the pandemic assisted that, and that there was kind of this halt that we couldn't really make the things that we wanted necessarily at the time. So, apart from having to get creative how to make certain things happen, I think it was really like, okay, let's sit down and think about this for a long time, and how do we really, really intentionally make something that Gabe is gonna like want to have as like this amazing, incredible album. And I I feel so grateful to have been brought in into something that I have so much respect for as like just an artistic work. I think it's an incredible album, and I think the songs that I've been chosen to make music videos for is just, it's so exciting to me because the songs are beautiful. So I think it's been interesting because they're not my works, you know? So I've been the person like listening and then asking questions, leading questions to get to the next step, and then thinking about, okay, let's make that happen. And then how do we make that happen? So yeah, so much of it has been trying to just make it happen.
Yeah, I think it's really I also want to say that working with Amara has felt super not supernatural but very natural. uh, just because I've known Amara for almost a decade now. We met in my like sophomore year or junior year of undergrad and like hit it off immediately. And I think of Amara almost like my sister just because we get along so well. And so working on the visuals with her has been such an interesting process because I feel like we come from a similar like visual language in a lot of the time, a lot of the work that we make outside of all of this. And so even with some of this video, I would like try and verbalize an idea and I wouldn't even like get the idea out all the way. And she'd be like, I know what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're thinking. And she would. So yeah, it's been a really a fun process just because I feel like she kind of finishes my visual sentences.
And I think, you know, like also in, you know, I had the privilege of knowing and having met your mom, and I feel like I'm gonna cry talking about it, but I think it's, I know so much pain has been your experience in making this album. And I think it's just like, I think it's really great to have known your mom, and it's beautiful to honor her and like thank you.
Thank you. For real. You know, it's funny you bring her up because when I try and think about there's so much pain in this album. I mean, I feel like the singles that I'm putting out only are showing just a portion of it.
Yeah.
Like Brushfire was almost like the thesis statement. You get a little bit of that pain here and there, like the opening image is like me burning to death in a home. And then Dee Dee is so heavily about death and what we do with that. But it's not about my mom and her passing away, which so much of this album is. And then the single I'm doing after this, which keep my lips nice and sealed for now, doesn't really get at my mom's passing either. So when I think about this album and all the pain that's in it and that it's birthed from, I try and also think about the happier moments of making this. And when I've actually finished this song and was mixing it, at the demo at least, because I had my friend Rory O'Brien, who makes music as Ode, they mixed it and did an incredible job, clearly. But when I was mixing the initial demo, my mom walked in and was listening to the song, and she sort of put her hands up like this and was like swaying back and forth, and she was like, I can hear people dancing to this in the club. Oh yeah, it's gonna be nice. And so I come back to that a lot when I think about this song. So yeah, it's a special memory.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, both of you guys. And what I'm hearing is not only what do we do with the presence of death or absence, but what do we do with it and make of it? And to me, that's what Dee Dee is. And especially returning back to the choreography of the fellow dancer embodying Dee Dee in some metaphorical way, and that those scenes of of them hugging you and enveloping you. And I'm just taken back to then, which leads me to ask, what was it like to like shoot that sequence, that dance, and to translate it for the music video?
I mean, I could take that one as a person filming it and thinking about shooting it and directing it. Yeah, I think, like I said earlier, it's so interesting to think about dance as something that you know, puts like a visual language to emotions and things you want to get across that you can't put into verbal language. And what's really special, I think, about putting something on video and like and having it on a screen is that you can get really, really close to moments that if you were watching it, say, live, right, you wouldn't be that close to that moment. And that's really something that I wanted to focus on. And I think Alexa did such a beautiful job of creating such like closeness in some of the movements, like this movement, the tapping movement that you mentioned. And I think there's just like certain like glides that were like, so I think if you had been watching it live, like you would see it, but you wouldn't be like there in that like glide or something. And
yeah, you wouldn't be able to feel that sense of it.
yeah. Or like the embrace, right? Like you wouldn't be so close to an embrace that almost feels like you shouldn't be that close to someone embracing that way, you know, and that type of intimacy. So I think like creating that for the viewer and really thinking about wanting to create a connection with someone that you miss, right? Like thinking about Dee Dee is just someone like I wish we had more time, right? And that's really what I was thinking about when we were shooting the choreography. And I also have never directed choreography for screen before, so that was one thing that I really wanted to do right and do justice to all of the people putting in time into this. And I think, you know, we did something really, really beautiful, and it's exciting to me that we have something that I feel like speaks to what I'm saying right now.
Yeah. And you know, that was one of the great pleasures of watching this music video, of not only like seeing how the dance kind of enveloped the message and spirit of the song, but also thinking about how not like it just reminded me of other great dance music videos. And I was curious to learn about just like what are your top 5 like music videos? Your dance are like, you know, I was thinking about Florence and Machine's like Odyssey of How Big, How Blue, where like dance is conveyed through all of it, or even like FK Twigs and her recent music videos where dance is the instrument to say of the song rather than the song being the instrument itself. So I guess I'm curious to know like what music videos informed or like inspired you guys basically?
That's a great question. I'm obsessed with music videos. I love them. I have loved them, I think, since I could understand what I was viewing on like a screen. I think more than movies, more than TV, more than cartoons, I think music videos just consumed my mind. And I think part of it is like I love music, but I think another part, there was this magic in like putting a visualization to how good music is. And I think that like that I want to say marriage, but I think it's cooler than marriage. I think that it's just like so fucking cool. And I was just consumed by it as a young person. And I always wanted to make music videos. You know, I'm an artist and I'm making my own work. So that didn't really happen naturally in my own practice. So having friends that I can do that with is so exciting to me. And yeah, I mean, like some music videos that just stay with me forever is like Sierra's Promise. Because of
Period.
I mean, it's so iconic, the single microphone stand, and she does all the magic, right?
Oh my God, I was totally thinking of that one too. That's so funny. Okay.
There's also dust in that music video too, which is interesting.
Yes, and Alexa brought that up when we were talking about the choreography. Sierra come through.
See, was good.
like she's the first one, honestly. Like we're just trying to get there. But yeah, that choreography incredible. I think like a woman like looking so like dope in like the hoodie and the sweats. I think there was just something that I was like, there's so I'm just not seeing that out in the world, you know. And to see a woman do that, I was just like, wow, like what. um I'm also like really, I'm obsessed with all types of music videos, but there's like that Bjork music video. I think it's Big Time Sensuality, right? Where she's on the the car
Mhm.
transport thing. And she's like driving it's going through New York City. I mean, it's so simple and it's just so fun, and like it's kind of like relajo, you know, it's just like a lot of like chaos. It's like the city and like standing in the middle of a street. It's so, I mean, what else would you do that for, right? And I think that's what's cool about music videos too. It's like you can imagine something that like, why else would that exist? I don't know. It's just like so cool.
Yeah. It's like a fantasy, like, and it's basically like a fantasy where like everything is like idealized and perfect, but also like escapism too. Like you listen to music to go somewhere else. And you watch the music video literally to go somewhere else too in a way.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's funny that Amara is like so, just like her knowledge of music videos, I feel is like encyclopedic almost. And I'm not the same way at all. I've never really been a big music video person, which is funny because I spent so much of like ages like 4 to 7 watching TRL. Um, so like
That
I
shows all music videos, by the way, Gabe. Like,
I know. And the ones that really did stick with me when you asked this question, the first ones that I thought of were No Scrubs, TLC,
hmm.
Yeah.
The Swing, The Swing, so iconic.
The fisheye.
The Fisheye,
Mhm.
which makes you think of Missy Elliott, I Can't Stand the Rain.
uh,
Yes, I
that's
love
like
that video.
life-changing music video.
Hmm. And then Destiny's Child, Say My Name.
Mhm.
That was like
The looks? Are you kidding me?
pivotal for little gay Gabe. So
Mhm.
incredible. And having the like choreography like set to the beat, time to it like so perfectly did something to me.
Mhm.
That's something in my mind where I was like, I gotta do something. I gotta do something like that.
Yeah, I mean, and then that just like takes me back to the Dee Dee music video where it's like you enter this club, this portal, and then you arrive, and then there's your partner, your dancer there, and it's like this whole like other fantasy that Dee Dee is implying, right? So what do you want the listeners to take away from Dee Dee?
What do I want them to take away? That queer nightlife is very special. There's like an energy in a lot of these places where we congregate that you can't find anywhere else. It's sacred almost. Like it feels, it's very spiritual. Um, and I've had a lot of the most freeing experiences in my life in spaces like this. Um, I want them to also acknowledge the complexity of what it's like to be a queer person in general. I think this song gets at a lot of the complicated parts of what it's like to move through the world as somebody that's like visibly recognizably queer. Um, and the song ends on that. There's a lyric where I'm sort of discussing the like sensationalized way in which people look at queer bodies often. I mean, it's specifically with Dee Dee, the way that I found out about their death was by chance, and it was through my sister who asked me if I knew who this professor was from a tabloid that she read. Um, and it just went into like grotesque amounts of detail about their body, and it posted like the coroner's report and everything on that article. It was so evil. And it was just really hard to see that somebody who lived their life so vividly and openly was being made into this spectacle in their death, and they had no control over that. Um, so that the song sort of ends on this note where I'm saying, like, I'm reading the news and have to acknowledge the spectacle being made of your corpse. Like, that's awful.
Mhm.
And that's the world that's outside of this dance floor. I think clearly a lot has changed in the past, what, 10 years even, in regards to how we approach queer people and queerness, and a lot for the better, but there's still so much, so much to be done on a global level. And I think a lot of it too is reckoning with um, colonialisms and the havoc it wreaked on certain people and um, places in the world. I think it's a lot of that is a consequence of that trauma. So I think it's something we have to address holistically. Um, yeah, and I also hope that everybody dances. I hope you hear that beat and you're like, okay, let me move to this. Let me move in a way that I haven't in a good year.
But I mean, like us gay people, like, or just queer people in general, like that's been the type of dance we've done all our lives, right? Of extreme happiness, and it's also like extreme sorrow, and carrying those two just to make the world and make the places we want to go to, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Existing as a queer person is a choreography at all times.
Mhm.
just a movement or a moment.
And I just want to say, like in relation to that article and thinking about Dee Dee and um, how we're not here to talk about ourselves once we're gone. And I think this music video being the antithesis to that article, right? And thinking about like in Gabe and I chose to caption the end of the video a credit line that said for our queer elders everywhere. And that's like so real, like continuing like the story and like being real about it, and like that it doesn't have to be like that article that is just simply the disrespect is like beyond, right? And I think being able to bring into the world something that is not that, and in honoring someone that's so incredible, and like I wish I knew them, right? But like I think it's also like that our elders are everywhere and they're looking out for us, and then we will become elders one day, right? And like also playing that role, I think is really really special that we were able to do that with this video, and I feel like we really did.
Mhm. I love that you were saying that it's like an antithesis to like the all legitimate or like state oriented documents that kind of just like proliferate as death, because
Yeah.
that's such a beautiful way to remember somebody, other than just like the bureaucratic number serialized way of like entombing somebody through music and through music video, right? Is a better way to honoring somebody's life or and their work, right? Because their work and scholarship was around dance and nightlife and movement. So what a nice way to honor their life in that way.
Yeah, I also want to say, I think like having dance be the antithesis to an article or report like that is really important, because it's fleeting. It can't be captured forever. I mean, of course, the music video, it's there, it's recorded, but
Right.
in spaces like the club where you're moving like that, it is a moment that can't be captured forever. Like, it's solely for you, for those people there, a result of all the people that came before you to make sure that places like this could still exist. So I think having this video where this choreography is that antithesis is really special, because it can't be it can't be captured for someone else that could use it in a way that isn't honoring.
Mm-hmm. And with that said, I'm thinking about what we could expect out of the album itself. And I'm, especially from the first two singles, Brushfire and Dee Dee, with both of them focusing about death and what do we do with that and how do we move on from that? What else can we expect from the album?
A lot more of that. I think, you get a lot more of that, a lot more explicitly throughout the album. I think there's parts of it that are a little hard to listen to be honest. Just because I sort of say things a little plainly at parts. I mean, I try not to. I think, just saying something like it is isn't often the best way to do it, but sometimes it is. And there's moments of that where I just say it, and it's tough to hear and it's tough to sing and have to record that, but it felt necessary. And I think a lot of the album too is sort of steeped in the supernatural and then like kind of sci-fi themes, just because a lot like managing the weight of death feels so superhuman. Or just feels like so heavy with a pain that like I had never felt before, that it felt like alien to me, that the world around me suddenly felt extremely alien. Or not suddenly, it's felt alien for a bit.
In a different level.
A different level and a different light. So there's songs where I'll like use metaphors of like UFOs or like an actual alien or ghosts, spirits, etc. And I think that was like a really fruitful way to talk about the like intangibles of death, or the like intangible pain of living in a certain place, existing as a certain way. Yeah, and then I would just warn everybody it's gonna be sad. It's gonna be sad.
It's gonna be good.
I would hope so. I'm hoping I get a little distance where I can like determine that for myself and not have to like be so in it where I can't really assess how I feel about my own music. But yeah, I think when I showed this album to a couple people when it was finally done, and they like sat there and listened to it and sat with it for a little bit, a lot of the comments that I got back from people were that it reminded them a lot of an album by Mount Eerie called Crow Looked at Me. And that was one, an honor, because I love that album a lot and it informed not necessarily like musically this album, but the ethos of it really informed the way that I went about writing this music. And that album is so very explicitly about Phil Elverum, the singer's wife, passing from cancer. And I hadn't heard death talked about in a way like that ever in my life. And it captured so much of the pain that I felt when my mom passed away. And obviously it's different because he lost his wife. That was like his counterpart, his other half, and very clearly you can tell from this album he like loved her to pieces. But losing my mother was like losing like my biggest cheerleader, my sense of stability, my source of happiness in a lot of ways, and like one of my best friends. So that the weight of that, I had to like filter that through that album for a little bit. And it's hard to listen to now. So I would hope that my album is something that you can listen to a few times more than I was able to listen to A Crow Looked at Me. Yeah, it's definitely heavy. So go into it once it's out with that in mind.
Nice.
Yeah, and I just want to say, like, with that, like, I'm so done not talking about death and not talking about loss and what that does, and how you're saying, Gabe, like being in another level of like, where am I in the world now that this person isn't here? I'm so over not talking about that, and with family, with friends, culturally. I think in the US, it's not something that's typical to talk about. And like when Gabe and I started talking about the visuals for this album, I had also lost a family member that I was very close to. And I think it was just so refreshing also to be like, yeah, we're gonna talk about it. Like for real, like that was awful. And then how do you keep going forward knowing that that person's not here anymore? And you have to figure it out, right? And I think we have to talk about it to figure it out together, because it can be so breaking to the spirit to be like, oh, I'll figure it out on my own. And I don't think that's the solution, right? With so many things. But I think just death is something that we somehow are shocked by when it happens. And it's part of the experience here, right? So I just want to say that, because I'm also making work in my own practice about death. And I think it's absolutely necessary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a big absence that we don't speak about it with much care, and just we don't talk about it at all in the States. And we need to carve more spaces just to casually talk about it, or to have really deep conversations about it. And I love that we're kind of having this conversation of death and its transformative processes over music, right? Over music that's something that binds and heals people, and like ultimately doesn't make it better, but music can hold it or make it easier to carry with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think like so much of my understanding of my own feelings in relationship to death, I mean, clearly because I talk so in depth about A Crow Looked at Me, but I don't think I'd have the language to even approach talking about death had it not been for so much music that I'd listened to throughout my life. Like another song that I think about quite a bit, which kind of informed this album too, was 212 by Gem Club. And that like gets at cancer at quite literally the cellular level. And it was like really not refreshing is not the right word, because it's like it doesn't feel good to have to hear that, but to know that someone else is capable of feeling that and understanding that on like the cellular level was like really important to hear. And I think I would hope that my music, though it is so so fucking sad, is able to maybe like provide a language to somebody that doesn't have it. I think that's so much of what music making is for me, is figuring out a language where there's a lapse of one. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I also want to say, like, thinking about our favorite music videos or what we're listening to right now, I'm thinking about music that has also shaped my language to talk about death. And Juan Gabriel, Amor Eterno, right? Like that song is so famous. And it's like you've probably gone through many experiences like not thinking about this, maybe listening to that song. Like it plays like at restaurants and grocery stores, right?
Yeah,
It's like it's
everywhere.
around.
Grocery store.
Right. But I think for me, I think my point of thinking about with music and this type of loss is really with like music from Mexico, and thinking about really sad songs. But I think it's so necessary, and it's really taught me, like you're saying, Gabe, that you can have a language for it, and it's just incredible that musicians are giving that in giving us that language and helping us, right? Because yeah, it's just not talked about, and I'm over that not talking about it.
I also want to add too that the music video for 212 by Gem Club is must watch. That's another one. It's not dance based, but in terms of like figuring out a language for death, like that is up there.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you guys so much for having this conversation with me. It was so fun to learn about, just like to sit down with you guys and to hear you guys speak about the story of Dee Dee, and to learn about your favorite music videos, and to learn more about Brushfire and how spiritual and affirming it's going to be dealing with these themes of like death and transformation and loss. And so we're really excited to hear it in August 20th. That's the date. So mark it on your calendars and make sure to stream it and to buy it.
Yes.
Buy the record. With that being said, good night. Thank you so much for spending your evening with us, and we'll see you guys soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you all again for joining us tonight for the premiere of the Dee Dee music video. I am so excited to finally say that Dee Dee is out now on everything, everywhere, for you to listen to, stream, buy, download, etc. Whatever you are compelled to do, so long as you choose to listen to it. I do also want to announce that, like I did for Brushfire, the first single, I also did a super limited run of 7-inch singles for Dee Dee. The singles are all handmade, every bit of this, I mean, except for the plastic covering. But the actual disc is a handmade lathe cut, made with love by Bailey at Hocus Pocus Records. Let me see if I can take this out so it's not so reflective. But it features this really awesome artwork of the actual flowers that are on the cover of the single art. I'm trying to not get my screen reflection in it. But there's roses, baby's breath, eucalyptus, lots of pretty little flowers in here. And the actual jacket, I handmade and hand numbered each one of these. So every one of these 7-inch singles are made with lots of love and sweat and tears and time. So if you want to get any of those, they are on my Bandcamp for purchase now. They run $20 each, which is, I know, a little bit of an ask, but they are all handmade. So do keep that in mind. Each one of these went through my hands, Bailey's hands, and yeah, made with lots of love. So once I get these links in the chat, I want to open the chat up to everybody else that came here tonight to ask any additional questions. Should you feel compelled, if you want to ask me something, Amara or Hugo, we're all here to answer any questions you might have about the single, the 7 inches, the video, anything you want to ask, we'll be there. So please enjoy the last 5 or 6 minutes of this live stream, and thank you again for coming. I appreciate it a lot, and I'm excited to share this song with you and look forward to sharing the rest of the album with you as well.
As I smear pigment across my lid, I think of you. Never settled into one form. You taught of bodies like ours in the tether us to two poles. presence, the weight of your word, the borders of my being softened. The gravity of your presence, the weight of your word, the borders of my being softened. Amidst a crowd, dizzy, distant disco. Feel your spirit. Oh, do you dance with me now, Dee Dee? Feel the pulse on me now, Dee Dee. Do you feel it? Morning bus home, hustler from behind. As I read the news, the spectacle of your corpse, raise my hand to block harsh sun, but it always bends around thresholds, doesn't it?